Oh man. Okay, so let's look at the problems. The set is in there, it's turning weld. I'm struggling to make fire by friction on the floor because it's so wet, even though the technique was good. I'm now trying to use a stump that's just like a little bit too high. Road drill has popped off. I've just got to try and find a way to make this work. If your life depended on this. Okay, cool, so you can see my hands. Hopefully this is going to work. I can go for a walk now. You'll be able to see what I'm looking at and why. So remember, I need to get a bearing block, I need a bow, I need a catch tray to catch the ember, and most importantly I need a spindle and a hearth board. So we're just having a look around here. What I'm primarily looking at is, or for, is dead standing wood. So it's already dry and it's in that prime condition. Let's head down through here. Okay, there's quite a bit of fallen material down here. Now this is where it's really important to understand what it is you're looking at. So straight away, this large tree here is a beech, and I can tell that because there's a few fallen branches here. Okay, holds onto its leaves, it has marcescent foliage, and that's beech. A holly is something I'm definitely going to be looking for, and that'll make a great bearing block. So if I can find a nice piece I can cut off with the right diameter, so you can kind of see what I'm dealing with here. And all you're going to need for this is something like your Laplander folding saw to find the materials, harvest them out and bring them back to the camp. This is great. So what I've got here is a hazel stool, which hopefully has got some dead standing wood on it. This all looks a bit too live. Yeah, that piece over there looks good. Let's have a look over here. Okay, so this piece here, I don't know if you can see this. I mean, it's almost, that might be too far gone, but we'll have a go. The rest of it's alive. So I'll take this piece here. I want to have a look inside. So as you can see, I'm just going to put my hand over. I'm going to put my cut in underneath the start. Oh yeah, that's real soft. That is really soft. So this is too far gone. Okay, and you can see this endophytic breakdown inside. You can see the fungus, that black stuff in there. Okay, so that's too far gone because it's soft and paper-like. You want it, I mean, the presence of this fungus is a really good thing, but you kind of want it tougher than this. This is too hard. If I can indent it with the nail, it's too soft. And I think really it's the same story the whole way along. Yeah, I mean, this is super soft. Okay, so this is the whole game. You're trying to find something which is not too dead. It's got to have it's got to be dead, but it's got to be more recently dead. Let's have a look here. What's this one here about? This one here. Okay, this feels like it could be good. I'm going to cut this off. I'm going to go ahead and cut this off at the base down here. Come at it from the other angle, and we'll see whether we can make use of this for fire by friction. So this is Corylus avellana and this is hazel. Perfect. Have a look inside there. Okay, so still quite soft, a lot of breakdown. It might make a good hearth board. If you imagine a cross section through there, that could work. So I'll go ahead and take this, stick it up at the camp, then we'll come back down and we'll keep on our search for a decent spindle. So now I'm just approaching this whole bunch of, what is this, long overstood hazel coppice. You can see the rods from the ones that are still alive. This one has all gone over. What I'm kind of interested in here is this section, wherever there's a spindle, feels nice and hard. It's clearly dead. So I might be able to just quite quickly carve a spindle out of that. That would work really well. Actually, this piece underneath looks even better. It's definitely not green. It just depends on how dry it is inside. Let's take a nice straight piece. Take this piece here. Yeah, that might work. That might work. That's a suitable possible. The downside is this one's quite close to the ground and it could be quite wet. The way to test for moisture is to use the top of your lip. Because of course if this is moist or too wet, it's not going to be of any use to us. But it's nice and straight. Hopefully you can see down that. So we'll take this one. We'll take a few other possibles. I don't think a bearing block is going to be too hard to find. And then we'll see whether we can make a little catch tray out of something quickly. All I've done now is finished making beginnings of a decent spindle. We've got ourselves a bearing block, and all I've done is just whipped a piece about a quarter off of this, the other offcut from the spindle, and I'm just quickly, readily bringing down the dimensions to make a suitable half board. It's always a trade-off. If you go too thick, remember you've still got to carve a notch out of this thing to actually make it go. You're going to do a lot of work. If you make it too thin, whilst you're still in the early process of bedding in the spindle before you actually have a real go at trying to make fire, you could end up pushing all the way through. So there's a bit of a trade-off there. And of course, all the while I'm doing this, I'm actually expending a lot of calories and racing the sun, which is going down. Okay, that was a gamble, but it's paid off. I've now got something that's starting to look like the right sort of diameter to make a half board. So much easier, I think, to be able to find the materials in a near ready size and state, work with them. A little bit wonky. So what's happened here is, as I've split into it, it's decided to impeller or propeller itself due to wind stresses that it was under when it was still in life. And that just happens sometimes. You open a piece of wood and it all starts to twist up on you. So you've just got to be ready to counteract that where possible. By and large, that'll be flat enough to work with though. We can work with that. So the next stage is to try and get the bow together. So I'm just going to use a bit of 550 paracord here. There are different types of cordage you could use for this, and they include various man-made fibers and natural fibers. The thing I really like about this stuff is the fact it's got this integral strength running through it, these other bits of cordage inside, and that means that it doesn't just get hot as the spindle is moving up and down and burn through and then suddenly snap on you, which can happen. As I said, guys, there's an awful lot of variables when you're doing this stuff, and that therein lies the skill, is to understand all the things that could possibly go wrong and how to try to mitigate them. So let's have a go now. So all I've done is I put a little notch in the top of here. I pulled the string through. I want a little bit of play, probably about my fist maximum, because remember I've still got to try and weave this spindle inside it. In terms of length, it's kind of from my chest right up to my fingertips. Okay, so from chest to fingertips is how long you should be going for your bow. I'm going to go ahead and rig this up. See whether we can make some use of this. Now, I'm not doing any particular amazing knot for this. I've heard people say that, you know, Canadian jams work well. I've heard people say that, you know, there's a British bowyer's knot that works particularly well for this. There's lots of different ways to skin a cat. I generally make sure it's tight at the top, make sure I've got that play in there, and then what I do is I tend to just wrap the last piece, because you never quite want to cut it. I'm very non-committal in cutting paracord because I always kick myself later because I find something else I should have used it for. So I'll just go ahead and put this through a couple of times, make a loop in there so that it just holds itself. Right, brilliant. Okay, so next thing I want to do, lay that down, is try and work out how this is going to sit. Now you want to make sure you've got enough play either side of this thing, and it is going to sit in the middle nicely, which it will. And then I'm going to go ahead and mark it with my knife. So I'm looking down the side here now, I'm looking down the side of here over the top to make sure I've just got a little bit of lip on this front edge, and where the point meets underneath I'm going to replace that with my knife. Okay, and working away from myself, I'm going to start to just create the divot required make sure the spindle sits inside. So you can see I've just created a very small divot so that when this sits inside to start with, it doesn't kind of jump all over the place when I start to turn it. So let's go ahead, put it together and see what happens. You might be wondering why I'm doing this on a stump and not on the floor. And the reasons are, it's so cold and wet in here today that I don't want the moisture jumping into the set that I've just been building. That's just going to make life even harder for me. Right, so I need to make a divot on the inside of the bearing block, same as I did in the half board. And the next thing I need to do, I'm going to place my foot on there. I'm going to feed the spindle in to the bow. Sight that into the half board. Get my bearing block in place and see whether this set wants to turn. Oh, there we go. You're always going to get teething problems. That is quite common. Remember, this is the first time any of these components have worked together in unison to do anything thus far. Just turn it really gently to start with. Oh, you want it to all sit. Okay. It's probably because I've not made this uniform enough, so a little bit more carpentry required to make sure it sits where it should do in the bowl. My bad. And we go again. Okay, just starting to get bedded in here in the top of the bearing block, and just starting to get bedded in here, but still not quite working as I'd like it to. So I've never had to I'm doing this right up on this stump here, which is not making it much easier for me. But I'm sort of quite enjoying the process as well. So let's put that in there. Let's hold this thing together and see whether we can get it to turn and bed in. Now you can see the spindles running down the inside of the bow. We've managed to get it to 200 degrees because I'm producing a little bit of smoke. So I'm starting to get hopeful that this will be a winner. But I've just got to keep going until I've made sure this is bedded in. And I'm using the full length of my mechanical advantage of the bow to do the work for me. Right, let's have a look inside. Okay, so it's nice and hot and angry. I'm confident that this would actually produce the powder I'd need to make fire. And as you can see by the size of the circle and the size of the top of the spindle, I have a little bit more work to do to fully bed this in. Once bedded in, I'll then cut out the notch, and it's over to our video on technique for bow drill to show you how to actually turn that into a successful ember and blow it up into a tinder bundle and get this fire going. So materials I collected 20-25 minutes ago are already well on their way to producing fire here, and I'm confident from the size of the powder, okay, it doesn't look like iron filings, it's not full of moisture, this would produce a nice fire. Now the first thing I need to do is put in a notch into this bowl shape so that the powder has somewhere to fall down through and onto my little catch tray, which is going to probably realistically be one of these little offcuts. So the way to do this is to place the bowl on the floor, mark from the middle point with the knife, mark back and over the side, okay, so I can see that line, and then you're going to take it out about 1/2 centimetre either side. I'm going to take my time with this because it's quite imperative that you get this angle right. If this is too fat or too wide, you will not be able to recruit enough surface area to gain the friction that you need to get the temperatures, those upper temperatures. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing here without poking the camera. You can see that notch starting to come in. Now a common fault here is that people forget to do the extra yards in the back, and so sometimes you find a build-up of powder and you're thinking, why isn't this working, why isn't it getting to the catch tray? And it's because you've made it look right from this side, but from this side it still needs a bit more work. So you can see I've gone right into the back there. Right, doing this up on a stump is slightly different, as thus. For a start, I've got to get my whole foot up on here, catch tray. Wind direction is key, and I'm probably not helping myself for the fact that the cold north wind is blowing in here at this angle. But if we get enough heat in here, that shouldn't be an excuse. So let's just have a quick look and readjust the set. You can see that this has become slightly worn again. I just need to chamfer this down. Okay, equally check that end isn't polishing. If you find that it's gone really shiny and it's polishing, just scrape the blade of the knife across a couple of times as such. And you should see that begin to rough up. That's going to catch the bowl a lot better. Because what can happen essentially is it's starting to polish. The two surfaces are polishing rather than rubbing together and creating heat. Okay, pop that back inside there. Now, I'm going to try and hop out the way so my leg is free of obstructing my movement with the bow. Let's just start to get it to turn. If we do hear any screeching, that's the moisture in there. We need to drive that out first. Now, on average, you're kind of looking at the same amount of calories that you burn, or is the equivalent of eating a Mars bar. It's that many calories. I think it's like 420 or something. Until I can stop that screeching, there's no real chance of making fire. So I'm going to get this powder out of there. It's not needed. We go again. Hopefully we'll have less screeching and we'll start to get smoke. Oh, bow drill has popped off. Guys, this is going to happen. This is real life. This is reality. Okay, work with nature, not against it. I'm going to come at it from this angle to try and negate the cold wind coming in. Sun is going down. I'm really up against it now. These are the realities. It's now got itself hot enough to start playing ball, finally. Only problem is now I'm running out of energy on my shoulder and I'm getting tired. I'm using calories and I'm cold. So we're now into that trade-off territory where it's getting harder and harder to produce an effort each time. Now what's happened there is I've produced so much powder it's blocked its path coming through. Oh man. Okay, so let's look at the problems. The set is in there, it's turning well. I'm struggling to make fire by friction on the floor because it's so wet, even though the technique was good. I'm now trying to use a stump, but it's just like a little bit too high. You've just got to try and find a way to make this work. If your life depended on this, you'd have to get it to work. The set itself is running really smoothly. Everything's kind of cohesively moving. The holly bearing block is working well with the hazel spindle. The hazel spindle's working well inside the hearth board. There's not really much to a catch tray. So this is kind of where we're at, and it's hard. It is really hard. Okay guys, so that was making and sourcing the necessary items from the wider woodland here to make fire by friction using a bow drill method. To watch the actual video on the technique and see the full process of going from the bedding in stage all the way through to cutting the notch, producing the ember, blowing up the bundle and creating the fire, check out the next video on that. Make sure you leave a comment because I'm really interested to see your thoughts on this subject. It's a massive subject. There's going to be people from all over the world here on YouTube. That's what I love about it, and I'd love to hear your take on it. Make sure you hit the like button, please ring the bell, and if you've got any friends who you feel would be interested in this channel, make sure you tell them too. Thanks guys.